Let me introduce some members of town government that assist this board. To my left is Vincent Pizzulli, attorney to the board. To his left is Blaise Donadio, a planner in the planning department. And to his left is David Barnes, assistant planning director. You're all here tonight seeking relief from the Smithtown zoning ordinances. And it's our job to try to help you achieve the relief you are requesting whenever possible. It's up to you to provide us with precise, accurate information so we as a board can make a decision based on the facts that you present here tonight. We as a board must consider the 5 following conditions. They're listed here for you. Number 1, whether an undesirable change will be produced in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties will be created by the granting of the variance. Number 2, whether the benefits sought by the applicant can be achieved by some other means. Number 3, whether the variance is substantial. Number 4, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. And number 5, whether the alleged difficulty was self-created. Procedures for tonight's meeting. Cases will be called in the order they are advertised. When you are called, please present your certificates of postings and mailings to Mr. Donadio. Then you'll be asked to go to the podium where you'll state your name and address for the record, and then proceed to tell us why you need the variance. At the end of your presentation, if anyone in the audience would like to speak on your case, they will be given one opportunity to do so. Then the applicant can come back to the podium to answer their concerns. Once the public hearing is closed, no further information will be accepted concerning the case. There are 3 ways to find out about your case. You can stay after the hearing, but there's no guarantee that your case will be acted on tonight. You can call the planning office tomorrow, or you can wait and be notified by mail. We do have 2 adjournments. Case number 18057 and case 18058, Michael Stylerek. Anybody here for that? That has been adjourned. Both those cases have been adjourned to March 26th. Please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The first case on the agenda is case number 18090, Paul Schwartz, 46 Tulipwood Drive, Comac. The location of the property, the east side of Tulipwood Drive, 1,506 feet north of Cedarwood Lane. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the front yard from 40 feet to 28 feet, reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 10 feet, and reduce total side yards from 28 feet to 23 feet for an existing 402 square foot front porch.
Good evening.
Good evening. Hi, everybody.
Are you the applicant, sir?
Yeah, I'm the applicant. My name is Paul Schwartz, 46 Tulipwood Drive, Comac, New York.
Fine, thank you. And would you like this gentleman to speak on your behalf?
I'd like this gentleman right here to speak on my behalf. Thank you.
Fine.
I have trouble here. The air conditioning was on. The heat was on. Maybe that was
All right.
Testing, 1, 2. Yeah.
Okay. Sir, could you state your name just for the record?
Sure.
Spell your last name, please.
Scott Kahn, K-A-H-N, 68 West Main Street, Oyster Bay, New York. It's okay to proceed?
Proceed.
Good. Good evening, Chairman of the Board, members of the Board. I'm here tonight representing Mr. Paul Schwartz, who resides at 46 Tulipwood Circle, Comac, Section 177, Block 4, Lot 13. We're before you this evening to ask the Board's permission to maintain an existing front porch with less than the allowable front, side, and aggregate side yards by ordinance. The porch is in line with the existing dwelling, encroaching no further than the existing non-conforming home, therefore maintaining an aggregate side of 23 feet. The front setback, as I'd like to point out, is actually 35 feet, not 28, requested on the north side and 37.7 on the south side of the dwelling. And I'd just like to hand in the survey. I think there was a typo on possibly the rejection, so I'd like to hand that in.
Yeah, thank you.
So as originally requested for a 28 setback, our request will only be for 35-foot setback to allow the porch to remain in lieu of the 40-foot front yard. And that's only a 5-foot encroachment. In conclusion, the property is well maintained, as you can see in the photographs, and the owner will condition this variance never to be enclosed. As far as it not producing any impact on adjacent properties, it's a one-story typical residential front porch, very common for this area and on the street. It's not a substantial request. It's only a 5-foot encroachment with an open porch. Again, we would condition never to enclose it. The benefit cannot be achieved by an alternative, unfortunately, is built and would be a financial hardship for the owner to have to alter it. And the variance would not cause an adverse effect on the environment. You can see why. The difficulty was not created by the applicant. It was started out as a repair and kind of got a little bit of a larger project, and again, the porch is existing. That's basically the case.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on the board have any questions?
No question.
No. Planning? No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard of this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18091, excuse me, Ryan Soul, 44 Crescent Place, Smithtown. The location of the property is the west side of Crescent Place, 109 feet south of Briar Root Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce total side yards from 28 feet to 25 feet for an existing 96-square-foot shed. Permit environmentally sensitive lands to be altered where depth to groundwater is equal to or less than 10 feet for an existing 96-square-foot and 112-square-foot sheds.
Good evening, members of the zoning board. I'm Ryan Sewell, 44 Crescent Place, Smithtown.
Can't hear.
Okay. So, good evening. Ryan Sewell of 44 Crescent Place, Smithtown. The two sheds were erected before I purchased the property in 2017. And when I had my pool inspected by the building department, they told me I also needed to get permits for the sheds as well. So that's why I'm here tonight, to seek a variance for those two sheds due to the total side yard issue and the environmentally sensitive lands. Number one, the shed would not produce an impact on the adjacent properties because the sheds have been up for a couple of years and nobody's said anything about them, so they're not causing a problem. It's not substantial because most neighbors in the neighborhood have sheds. It cannot be achieved by an alternative because the sheds are already constructed, obviously. It would not cause an adverse effect on the environment because when the work was done, no such environmental damage was done and continues to be the case. But it was created by the applicant or former owner. So that's the only strike against me, I suppose. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, no question.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please?
Second?
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Thank you.
The next application is case number 18092, Matthew and Jacqueline Markoff, 1 B Drive, Hauppauge, the location of the property, the northeast corner of B Drive and Hampton Street. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the front yard setback on Hampton Street from 10 feet to 4 feet for an existing 6-foot fence. Permit a fence greater than 4 feet in the required front yard.
Oh, come here.
Good evening.
Good evening, sorry. Okay, my name is Jacqueline Markov. I live at 1B Drive with my husband, Matthew Markov. When we bought the house originally, there was no fence. We had to do a great deal of work to the backyard to grade the lawn. So the only part of our yard that is flat is the side yard currently, after the work that we did pulling out trees and restoring the ground. We didn't originally know where to put it, so I was 9 months pregnant at the time. We kind of got to look around the neighborhood and placed it 4 feet from the curb, which is actually 13.75 feet from the, I'm sorry, it's 4 feet from the sidewalk, 13.75 feet from the curb. It's a 6-foot fence. Wait 1 second. The reason why we want to keep it a 6-foot fence and not bring it to a 4-foot fence is because the traffic from Old Willits, people pass through the neighborhood, and if we have a 4-foot fence, it's an issue with privacy and also safety for our son. And then the other issue is if we were to move it, we did so much work planting trees in our backyard with the trees inside the fence, that then those trees would be outside the fence, and then we lose the flat area in our backyard if we have to move the fence in additional, I think it's what, additional 6 feet from where it currently is. So let me see what else I wrote down here. Also, our house is on the corner, so into our backyard, we have a lot of neighbors that can see into our backyard. So we also did a privacy along the back of our backyard, like the back line of our backyard, because we don't have any privacy. So we're really hoping to keep this 6-foot fence. And also, the last thing is we abide by the 70-foot triangular clearance, so it's not an issue for cars. So they have a line of sight when they're turning on the corner. So the fence is set back to that guideline. It's just the issue of the extra 6 feet from the curb. I mean, from the sidewalk. So we're hoping to keep it a 6-foot fence.
Okay. You indicated that the side yard by Hampton was the only flat side of the yard? The rest of your yard slopes down?
Yeah, significantly. So much that we had to bring in trucks full of dirt because it was like totally slanted. So the side yard is where we currently have him playing with the sandbox and soccer. So that's the only flats. And we don't have it, like the side yard is our only yard besides, like there's no other side yard. So it's the right side of our, if you're facing our house, the right side of our yard is the only side yard we have. There's no space on the left.
Great, thank you.
Thank
Does
you.
anyone on the board have any other questions?
No.
No? Planning?
No, thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved in second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion
Thank
carried.
you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18093, John Argyros, 224 Larch Lane, Smithtown. The location of the property, the north side of Larch Lane, 779 feet west of Brookside Drive. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 37 feet for a proposed 66-square-foot front porch. Reduced total side yards from 34 feet to 25 feet for a 164-square-foot proposed side yard porch and proposed 440-square-foot first-floor addition.
Good evening. My name is John Ardros. I live at 2224 Larch Lane, Smithtown. So I'm requesting a variance for my front yard and side yard and to build a second floor on the top of the existing structure. We need the addition in order to support our future family. The change will not produce an undesired effect, seeing as though the square footage and side yard are not substantial in relation to other structures in the surrounding neighborhood. And the benefit cannot be achieved by an alternative because the house was built pre-code and is already non-conforming. Seeing as though my wife and I would like to start a family soon, we'll be needing more space in our house. It won't have any negative effects on the environment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No, thanks.
You want to see this?
Planning?
No, thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can you have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you. Please. We didn't even get the drawings. I know, just wait a minute.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18094, Jonas and Golly Wagner, 19 Comanche Lane, Comac. The location of the property, the north side of Comanche Lane, 559 feet east of Seminole Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 50 feet to 45 feet for a proposed 328 square foot bi-level deck.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. My name is Jonas Wagner. I reside at 19 Comanche Lane in Comac. I'm here tonight to seek a variance to receive some relief on a rear yard setback. I currently have an existing deck in place. I'm looking actually to rebuild the deck. It does not meet currently New York State building codes, looking to replace it to meet the new deck that meets new codes, but that current deck does not have that variance in place. The deck was built prior to my ownership. I've been in the house now close to 10 years. The deck I estimate from the previous owner is about 19 to 20 years old. There hasn't been any concerns from any of the neighbors, and there should be no negative impact to that area. Other homes in the area have similar sized decks. The house is a split level house. The deck that I'm seeking relief for is off of my kitchen area, which is 4 feet off the ground. And in order to place a table and chairs outside that deck, that's the reason why I need to seek the relief. Thank you.
Anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No question.
No, thanks.
Planning?
No, thank you.
Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18095, Jorgen Fiji. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Grove Avenue and Pine Street in St. James. The property is split zoned R10 and R21. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum required lot area from 21,000 square feet to 18,285 square feet. Reduce the minimum front yard from 50 feet to 48 feet on Grove Avenue. Reduce the minimum side yard from 16 feet to 12 feet. Reduce the minimum front yard on Pine Street from 40 feet to 29 feet for a proposed 2,164 square foot single-family dwelling.
Good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Michael Morbillo, architect, Inspire Design Group, representing the owner and applicant. I have submitted a power of attorney form to the town attorney. My office is located at 273 Lake Avenue in St. James. And the application before you this evening is for a new 2,164 square foot, two-story residence. It's a four-bedroom residence with an attached 474 square foot garage and 115 square foot front porch. We have a few requests this evening, and some of these requests are related to the fact that we bought a paper street known as Pine Street, which is indicated on the survey site plan. My client is actually the applicant, which is Phil de Blasio, P. de Blasio Builders. He is a contract vendee with the owner, Mr. Fijay, who's listed on the call of the meeting. And he's intending on purchasing this property and putting up the new residence. Some of the constraints that we have right now on the property certainly is the paper street, which has to do with a couple of the requests. One, the paper street is creating a second front yard for us. So we're seeking a reduction in the minimum front yard along Pine Street of 40 feet to 29 feet. This is basically the apparent side yard. My client has spoken with the highway department. When the time comes, should he purchase the property if everything goes through, he's already had discussions with them about abandoning the road and approaching the neighbor on the other side to divide up that right of way. So generally that in the future is the intent that that would actually buffer that side yard even more. And virtually eliminate that being a front yard. So he can't do that at this time because he's not the owner of the property, but in advance he has spoken with the highway department and they had no objection to abandoning that road. So that addresses one of the requests. The other requests have to do with certainly lot area. We're seeking about a 13% reduction in the lot area from 21,000 to 18,285. It's about a 13% reduction. Not a substantial request, and also in the future, it's hopeful that with the abandoning of the paper road, that would actually that additional square footage would basically put us over that amount in the future. So I think these are some things just for consideration. But on the surface, it's not a substantial request. It's about 13% reduction in lot size. The other request for the front yard facing Grove Avenue, very minor. That a lot of it has to do with the fact that there is a little bit of a jog on, at the end of Grove Avenue, and in the closest direction, we're about 2 feet closer. And that's a pretty minor request that we have. And if we look at the other homes in the neighborhood, generally we're in conformance with the setbacks on the block. The last request that's on there is the second side yard reduction. Is about a 25% reduction. That is on the east side of the property. Again, we have a little bit of a jog on that property. Also, the way that the property line is, the effect that would have is on the neighbors, which are basically on Hobson Avenue to the east, and most of those residents are close to 100 feet away, so the impact is pretty minimal as far as the neighborhood. The requests aren't substantial. It's not going to have an environmental impact. We are going to look to meet all drainage requirements. The house, I think, fits in with the general character of the neighborhood. It's not an oversized residence. It's sort of a modest home, which I think will fit in with the neighborhood. There's really no other way to kind of place the house because of the current constraints with the paper street. The applicant didn't create the situation. I also want to bring to your attention that we did get some input from, or receive some input from some of the neighbors on the block. And Initially, actually out front, and it's indicated on the site plan, there's a patio memorial area that's at the end of the block. And this memorial was created for a former resident who recently moved out of the neighborhood. His wife had passed away, and their house had been on TV on one of the TV shows where people come together to help out. And the applicant, actually Phil de Blasio, was one of the main builders that was involved in kind of seeing the project come together. So there's been expressed a concern, like what's going to happen to this memorial that's there. So the applicant did reach out to this gentleman's name is John Vitale. He used to live on the block, and he reached out to him to ask him about the memorial, and he wanted to let him know that whatever, it's on town property, it's in the right of way. He said basically whatever Mr. Vitale's wishes and whatever the town's wishes are, however that comes together, he would meet whatever requests that they would have. So whether it would be some sort of preservation of the memorial or relocation to where he currently lives, he's moved nearby, hasn't been determined. But he has spoken with him and told him that whatever needs to happen with it, that he would respectfully do whatever needs to be done. So whether it's reassembling or whatever the town comes to, it's not entirely in my client's hands because it is town property, but he has agreed to do whatever is respectfully is requested of him. So that we did hear from, or we understand that there's a concern from some of the neighbors on this, and I believe that some of them maybe even be here tonight to speak on it, so we'll probably get more information on that. I think I've covered most of the points that I have as far as our requests, and if the board has any questions at this time, I'd be more than happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions on the application?
Yeah, a couple
Yeah.
things. On that side yard,
Yes.
I guess you're calling it the side yard reduction from 16 to 12,
Yes,
which to all of the neighbors is really their rear yard.
yes,
The concern I have is you're only 12 feet, and obviously this is going to be somewhat impacting because you're going to be 12 feet from the property line that everyone uses for their backyard. Is it possible, and I also noticed that the name of one of the neighbors is the same name on the call of the meeting. Does that person
Yes.
own both lots?
yeah, it's a good question. It's a good question. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he does.
Okay, anyway,
Yeah.
the concern I would have is that in light of the fact that there is a paper street that may or may not be opened, if it is not opened and the applicant or contract vendee makes an application to have that road abandoned,
Yeah.
all the concerns that I have go away because
Yes.
that building can be moved further away from those houses.
Yeah. So this is where we're kind of in a catch-22 with all this, is that my client doesn't own the property. He doesn't own the property right now. That's Mr. de Blasio. So he can't make application to abandon the road because he doesn't own it. The current owner is retired builder, and lives in Florida. So it's not really within his ability to go for the abandonment. So he's definitely amenable to adjusting the house. I think there was conversations with the planning department, and what I had mentioned was that due to the distance that the residents on Hobson are, being, like I said, close to 100 feet away, the 4 feet didn't seem to have a substantial impact, even though, it's on paper, yeah, we're going from 16 to 12. So that's where that came, and they said, let's look at the hand that's in front of us, where if something does happen as far as the paper street, it was recommended that we go to that 12 feet. So,
Excuse me.
Yeah.
Good.
so that's generally, we definitely would be amenable to moving it closer to to Pine Street. However, that would, it's sort of on paper right now, that would change the request from a 40-foot minimum front yard to a 25-foot front yard. So I think that's something definitely we'd be amenable to on it. It's just we did this on recommendation, I thought, from planning staff on this when it was originally being laid out.
Right.
So,
Okay. Thank you.
sure.
Anyone else?
No.
Planning?
No, thank you.
No? All right, is there anyone in the audience that'd like to be heard?
A lot of
All right,
people.
come on up, please. When you come up, could you state your name, spell your last name, and give your address for the record, please?
Yes. My name is David Zack, Z-A-C-K. I'm at 24 Grove Avenue. And what was the last thing you asked?
No, name and address?
Name and address, there we go.
Thank you.
I do have a bunch of signed letters from people on Grove Avenue and Park Avenue and Hobson requesting the
Thank you.
variances not be granted.
Thank you.
My wife and I live at 24 Grove Avenue. I'll be speaking for both of us because she is not here tonight because she was called out of town on business. 19 years ago, when we were shopping for a home in St. James, there were a couple of properties available on Grove Avenue. We chose 24 Grove because of the its unique location, last house on a dead-end street, backed up to the woods. When we inquired, we were assured by the town of Smithtown a number of times that the land next to us could not be built on with existing zoning laws. So we made our investment, and we put a little bit more money into it because it was the most expensive property on the lot, on the street at the time, and we've lived there and we raised our daughter there. There are a lot of reasons not to build at the end of Grove Avenue. The first one is the land is too small to develop. The existing laws don't permit it, as the land is in two separate zoning areas as discussed earlier. There's a loss of privacy for us that we paid for. It's going to be destroying more of the green space left in St. James, and that kind of goes to one of the points in your considerations. There's potential loss of wildlife, birds, cardinals, owls, woodpeckers, fox, squirrels, chipmunks, and deer. And then one of my big concerns is the drainage issues. Currently, our basement and garage have flooded several times. When there's a big rainstorm, the water comes down, there's poor drainage on Lake Avenue, so the water comes down Grove Avenue, comes to the end of our block. Impervious coverage with the new development will make the situation even worse. And then there's the issue with the snow. When it snows, the snow is plowed to the end of the block in front of the Memorial Garden. I'm not sure how it would be done if there's another driveway that needs to be cleared out as well. Then one of the things that's personally important to my wife and myself is the potential loss of the garden at the end of the block. Anne Marie Vitale brought Grove Avenue together at a time when we're just people living in houses, one end of the block not knowing the other end. She helped make a neighborhood circle of friends, which is why her memorial garden is literally a circle. It has stones along the borders. The garden is there for all of us to enjoy. It helps us remember what is important to her and what is most important in life. The Memorial Garden is a place where people in the community ride their bikes, walk their dogs, play with their children and grandchildren. It's where prom and graduation pictures are taken and celebrated, and sometimes just where we sit and ponder life. Anne Marie once referred to Grove Avenue as Pleasantville. For the past 14 years, it's been a place where everyone knows everyone's name, a place where you could knock on anyone's door if you needed help, and it would be available. A place where it can take 20 minutes to drive down the street because everyone wants to stop and say hello. A place with great people and big hearts, in short, a place that we love. Grove Avenue has had some turnover recently, and we're looking forward to getting to know our new neighbors, hopefully to get together this spring in Anne Marie's Memorial Garden. So we ask you not to grant the 4 variances needed to develop at the end of Grove Avenue. Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you. Next. Good evening.
Hello, Board. Good evening. My name is Doug Reynolds. I live at 1 Grove Avenue.
You spell your last name, please?
Reynolds, Reynolds. Douglas. I'm speaking for my wife and my family. That's better. Yeah, much better. I'm here today representing my family as residents of Grove Avenue. We're aware of the request for variances to develop the vacant property at the end of our dead-end block and are opposed to it. The space has been vacant since we bought our property here in St. James and was a factor in our decision to invest in this community. Having undeveloped green space so near has been a major factor in our quality of life here, and as a tax-paying member of the community, I do not want to see that changed. The development of the land at the end of our block will definitely change the quality of life and the green space that we've grown accustomed to here on the Grove. Part of the space, albeit public domain, has grown to be a memorial for a near and dear soul. Excuse me. For a near and dear soul, she blessed us with our presence in life, and to lose Anne Marie Vitale's Memorial Garden, located at the end of our avenue, would be very disheartening for the extended family she left behind here on the Grove, as we affectionately call it. This garden has been and continues to be utilized and maintained by our Grove Avenue family for the past 14 years. We would like it clearly noted that we are against granting the variances required for the space to be developed. We hope that the town sees fit to deny the variances to the codes that are in effect today, preventing the overdevelopment of our beautiful homestead that is St. James. Thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Paul Kozlowski, K-O-Z-L-O-W-S-K-I. I live at 12 Grove Avenue. I have one of those letters that you have signed in front of you, and I certainly can't compete with the emotion of the previous two speakers, although I have those same emotions. Oh boy, here it comes. But I want to get away from that and just say, I wasn't aware that this is what you go by, but it seems to me that this variance violates 4 of those 5 rules. 1, 2, 3, and 5. 1, 2, 3, and 5. It's certainly a substantial change to our block. I don't want to read it all, but it certainly violates 4 of those 5 things, and I strongly wish you do not approve this variance. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Maureen.
You could use the microphone, please.
Of course. Maureen Largan, L-A-R-G-A-N. I live at 22 Grove Avenue. It's lovely. I don't think I share some of your vocabulary, and while I've heard everything that was said, the architect who was here talking earlier spoke about 13% reduction of this and that. I don't really know what that's referring to. If you can you tell me what the size of that plot will be? Because I know it's not that big an area. He's talking about reducing things on the side and in the front and along the street. And how far along?
18,285 square feet. 18,285 square feet.
But what is that in terms of an acre?
It's a little under a half an acre.
Excuse me?
Slightly under a half an acre.
Okay, thank you. That was it. One thing is not going to affect your decisions, but I've lived on that street for 15 years. It never had a sign at the end that said dead end. And frankly, I don't like it. I think it should say no outlet, because we do have a robust and friendly place, and I just don't like that word. So maybe you can take that off. And if there is a house there, that would be required, that it not say dead end. Not all brains, but it is feeling about the block.
All right. Thank you. Anyone else?
Kit Gabrielson, 17 Park Avenue, St. James.
Could you spell your last name, please?
G-A-B-R-I-E-L-S-E-N. Okay. We have several houses going up on Park Avenue as well. The drainage issue is horrendous. I'd like to know who in the highway department you talked to, because we've been trying to get that road, not a paper road, for the past 30 years I've been living there. So, and they keep saying, no, it's a paper road, it's going to stay a paper road. And they have no plans of giving it to anybody or doing anything with it. So I don't know who he said he talked to in the highway, but we can never get any answers for 30 years. Maybe he can. The flooding condition is horrendous. There are drains that have been put in that are going to be affected by this on both sides, Park and Grove Avenue. There's 2 more houses going up on Park Avenue, which is going to impact the flooding as well. There is nature preserve, park, and everything else that goes with it. How many more spec houses do we need? And Mr. Fidge is about how old now? 90-something years old, living in Florida? Does he need another spec house? I don't think so. So I say no to this.
Thank you. Next. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Frank Fariello, F-A-R-I-E-L-L-O. I live at 23 Park Avenue. I moved to the house at 23 Park Avenue in 1991. I moved my family there. The primary reason was the excellent school district that Smithtown offered, as well as the town codes regarding property sizes. I grew up in Franklin Square and watched with great concern as the town built in every open lot, and they used variances as a justification to do this. This not only denuded the entire town, Franklin Square, but it put a great strain on the infrastructure. So if you drive through Franklin Square, my hometown, nowadays, it's almost indiscernible from Queens. No disparaging Queens, but it's not really what I signed up for. 5 years ago, we were told that a contractor was able to purchase a large chunk of open space that abuts my property. So this is the space on the other side of Pine, the paper road. They have proposed to put 4 homes, and this has come to be known as Hobson Gardens. This is the property that goes at the end of Park Avenue. As part of the construction, the town is supposed to extend Park Avenue and put a cul-de-sac to accommodate the 4th house, which is going to be a pretty big structure at the end of our property. Of course, my neighbors and I, we are lamenting the loss of another green space, but as far as we know, there are no variances needed with regard to lot size or frontage for this project. Now we are faced with losing the rest of this open space with this new project, and this doesn't require 1 variance, but 4 variances in order to make this property fit. Several of these requested variances are 25% less than what the code is right now. So in my opinion, I think we're at a tipping point here where we just seem to be building on every open space. And like many of the people here spoke of, when I moved here, one of the main reasons was the dead-end street, the property. I was also specifically told, because I went to the town, that they couldn't build there because they didn't have enough frontage and the codes wouldn't allow it. And here we are today. Granted, it's 29 years later, but it seems like this great open space that I've lived next to for 29 years and raised my family is going away. So this little small natural habitat is home to a great deal of wildlife. Somebody spoke about it. There are owls and many, many birds, raccoons, rabbits, fox. Unfortunately, there's also vermin that live in this open space. About, I don't know how many years ago, several years ago though, when the town was trying to mitigate the problem that we have at Park Avenue with this flooding, they put in some catch basins up Pine Street on this paper road. After they did that, I'd say within a month or so, my neighbor and I, we got a rat problem. Rats came up out of the construction area and just were in our yards. It took, I'm going to say, at least 2, maybe 3 years for us to kind of get a handle on this rat situation. At the time, I called the Suffolk County Public Health Department, and they confirmed that generally when there's construction in an area like this, the rats, they look for a place to expand their, where they can feed. So that's a concern that I have. Lastly, Kit spoke about the flooding we have on Park Avenue. There are, on the plans, if I didn't bring them with me, but the plans for the Hobson Avenue, the Hobson Gardens project, they noted that there are catch basins on Pine. So if now they plan on abandoning that road, I'd like to know how they're going to deal, how's the town going to deal with these catch basins, which actually didn't really help our situation that much, but they did help a little bit. The last big rain we had a few weeks ago, I measured 1 foot of water in front of my property. So I'm not sure how this project, the Grove Street, would affect that, but I'd like someone to look into that, because if it adversely affects it, we can't afford any more water at the end of the street. So anyway, I thank you for listening to me. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Noreen Kozlowski, Kozlowski. I live at 12 Grove Avenue, St. James. I'd like to reiterate the things that were said about the green space of the end of Grove Avenue. 30 years ago, I moved out here with my family from Queens because I wanted my children to live in the country. And that area at the end of Grove Avenue has been a source of joy for my children and now my grandchildren. I walk my grandchildren daily, weather permitting, down to that Anne Marie Park. We have seen deer, red fox. In the evening, we hear owls. I am so concerned for the wildlife that is going to be affected by the construction down there. Furthermore, what's going to happen to Grove Avenue with these big construction things coming down my block, ripping up my road? There are so many environmental concerns for me, and I hope that you will address this and look to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for having this tonight. My name is Steve O'Donnell, capital O apostrophe capital D O N N E L L. Live on 21 Park Avenue. A lot of things have been said tonight. I don't want to bore you with saying the same things. I'm born and raised in St. James. Literally born. My family was living on Cambon, and my wife and I, when we met, we got married, stayed here. I've been in 21 Park Avenue since Labor Day weekend, 1984. It's going to sound like a common refrain, but I too went to the town and said, what's up with Pine Street? Because when you look at the old Hagstrom maps, there's a street there. All right, I'm dating myself, there's maps. And they assured me that there was not enough, that it violated all variances, there was not going to be any construction there. This is 1984. Frank Ferriello alluded to, here we are 29 years later. It kind of sounds like that we keep bending the rules and bending the rules and bending the rules, and here we are. You're familiar with the book, if you give a mouse a cookie, it's going to want a glass of milk. If you keep giving in on major variances like this, 25% is a lot. And on a street that several years ago the town tried to give to the neighbors, and that fell through. For whatever reason, they said, nah, we can't do that. Now I'm hearing about it, sounds like a kind of a, I don't know, quiet deal to abandon the property that people have been trying to get it somehow abandoned or kept as a green space for years. I don't know, there's just a lot of things about this that bother me. I'm not an IMBY. This is the first meeting I've ever come to. There's been other things on Park Avenue, on Hobson, on Lake. They've talked about the flooding. I can assure you that after the flooding on Sunday, we had a lot of ice outside. They've been trying for years, decades, to fix the flooding. If you take away more land and you put more concrete on it, that's not going to help the problem. It's going to make it worse. So the variances are too big, too great. The town has said in the past that there's no way they can build. Now all of a sudden it's being considered. I just think that it's about time that we finally just say, okay, hey, enough's enough. Let's keep the green space. Nobody can build on it anyway. That was what we've been told for almost over 30 years. So that's my piece. That's what I'm going to say. But thank you very much for hearing me tonight.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone else? No? Michael, you want to come back?
Okay, so there was a lot of points made here this evening, and I'll get to some of the technical points that were made. First and foremost, as I mentioned in the beginning of my presentation, is, Mr. de Blasio is been lived in St. James, had an office on Lake Avenue for 30 years. He's a part of the community. He's very involved. He does a lot of things. He is friends with John Vitale, who is, Anne Marie was his wife, who passed away. And he's spoken with him. And whatever he intends to do will be of the utmost respect and according to whatever everybody wishes to be done with it. So, just to put that aside, he's somebody that's not looking at it lightly and just trying to push things aside and, saying, well, this is my right or this is that, and, he's very concerned about it. Myself being a resident of St. James for the last 20 years, I'm familiar with the water issues. We have water issues all along around St. James and Smithtown. We're going to be putting in drainage for this. I understand increasing impervious area. We're looking to address that. And we will address and we'll meet all the requirements. As far as the drainage on the Paper Street, I'm actually not familiar with that. If that, the way that backs up over onto Park Avenue, when you abandon a road, it can only be, against the two adjoining lots. So there are lots that back up to Park Avenue. So I'm just going to hand in a tax map for a moment, just to say, listen, we only have control. I'm sorry, we only have control of, or can potentially apply for abandoning a portion of the paper road that abuts this property. We can't go all the way through to Park Avenue. So there's another lot that's basically to the south of the parcel, the subject parcel. Ours is marked in pink on the highlight on there. So if we did look to abandon it, and maybe it's not the recommendation to abandon it. If they want to preserve green space and do something with that 50-foot wide area to preserve it, that's up to the town to decide. Initially, it's just standard practice in the town to, not have that liability when there's a paper road in place. If there's drainage on the Park Avenue, on the Park Avenue side, then my assumption would be that's going to stay in place because they never want to diminish drainage at the end of, or on any street or in any area. So, that's just something I think that, as far as drainage, you're not going to be looking to create any circumstances with it. So, just to go to some of the points that were made, certainly nobody wants to lose any green space. We all live in parts of the town. We all understand, this board has heard it, that, listen, this has been a wooded area for many years. I lived on Roseville Avenue a couple of blocks away from here, and, they're putting up 2 houses on wooded lots, that, an acre of wooded land that's there now, and nobody likes to see it go away. All of our houses were some time ago wooded areas, and within the last, 50, 30 years, they get developed, so nobody likes to see it, and that's understandable. But if the planning department sees fit that a strip of that land should remain in place, that's not within our control, and maybe that's a part of this application to address, is that, if they decide to keep that paper road for some sort of green space, then maybe that, that remains, and that's maybe why to consider these variances in that light. Certainly, just to go over any last little items in here, we understand about the vermin and other things. My neighbor put an addition on his house. It disrupts things. We understand that short term, it's a problem around there. We're not looking to contribute to anything in that fashion. I'm just looking over any last little points on here. I think I pointed to the substantiality of these things. This board has had certain precedents put in front of it. When you look at variances in their total, as was made, there's a number of them, but there are a number of minor ones. And I know that folks don't understand that the zoning board exists because the state mandates that we can't have strict, rigid rules, and when we have circumstances where we need to look at the condition of a paper street or a pre-existing lot, those need to come before the board. We're not looking to ask for something that is of great substance beyond, so I know it's hard to sometimes look at that list that's there, but we do conform to those requirements. And with that being said, if there's any last questions, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this time in response to anything.
Just have one for Mike.
Sure.
Health Department approval yet?
We do.
You do?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, anybody else on the board?
No.
You have a motion to close the application, please?
Second.
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Mo-
Thank you.
There's no decision, do they know that? I don't know if they do. There's no decision.
No. There'll be no decision on this case tonight that we just heard? No, we don't have environmental, we need a CEQA first. A CEQA,
Environmental
environmental study.
study.
So we have to wait for that before we can vote on it, so.
Will we know when you're going to vote?
Not usually, because we don't know when we're gonna get the CEQA.
But we won't know by tomorrow.
Oh, no. No.
Can I ask one question? For 30 years, we've been trying to get that road, and the town wants the road. Who do I go to find out how does this happen now, that the road is going to go to a builder, but the people who live there for 30, 40, 50 years can never get that road? Who in the town decided this? He said, somebody in the highway department told them. Who?
I would go to the highway department.
There's no application pending with the town, and when a road is abandoned, it's generally split between the adjacent neighbors. It's never given to anyone.
Thank you for the answer.
Sure.
We're not saying how we can get a road that we can't get.
You're welcome.
That's why you give any reasonable answer.
You want to send this? This is the.
Right. What's that called?
You're welcome. All right. You ready, Steve?
Trying to figure out what case this was.
Tulip Road? Well, that was one of those.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18096, James Brusaleri, 132 Longfellow Drive, Kings Park. The location of the property is the west side of Longfellow Drive, 113 feet south of Riviera Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum rear yard from 35 feet to 24 feet for an existing 520 square foot deck. Reduce the minimum distance to the rear lot line from 2 feet to 0 for an existing pond.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Salim Abraham, S-A-L-I-M, last name Abraham, A-B-H-R-I-H-A-M. I'm the architect.
Are you the applicant, sir?
No, I gave you a M2451, yes, form. Allow me to represent him.
Is it good?
We'll get back to you.
Looks good.
All right. I'm sorry.
That's okay. I reside at 254-10 Francis Lewis Boulevard in Rosedale, New York, 11422. The two things for tonight is the existing rear deck that was purchased with the house, and the owner decided to do some renovation to bring the existing structure to code. And also the pond in the back that was for his daughter that loved the fish, and that's what you see in the back of the rear yard in regards to that pond. On the survey shows setback about, say, 9 inches. We can argue about 1 feet, but as per code requires 2 feet. The pond's about 2 feet deep. There is a fence around it and powered by a pump that recirculate the water. For the deck, when you bought the house, the deck was in the same shape, but you had to put more piers on the bottom for the different levels that you see on your pictures. You would like to keep it like this because that creates a better area for the kids in the backyard, allow you to go from one level to the other, and make it a little bit oasis. You do have a shed in the backyard that don't meet the setback. We remove that and bring it back to code about 4 feet away from the property line each side. So he's willing to work and to make everybody happy. But for the deck, he's missing about 11 feet, basically. If you remove that 11 feet, you don't have basically a lot of deck space in regard to the area. And that would be all.
Thank you.
Yeah,
You get it?
yeah, they're talking back there and stuff.
Would you need him to? Do you need him to repeat it? No. Right. Thank you very much. Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
No.
No, thank you.
No. Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard? Come on up, please.
My name is Arthur White. I live at 157 Cypress Drive. Excuse me. I'm the backyard neighbor to this house. I just want to come here on a personal note and say I'm sorry this wasn't labeled 094. But anyway, I just want to say that that deck was there when the guy bought the house. I have no problem with the deck. The little fish pond he's got out in the backyard is right by my back fence. I have no problem with that. As a matter of fact, sometimes I have coffee in the morning and I stand at the fence and look at his fish that I don't have to take care of. I don't know what the deal is, but you have to do what you have to do, but I'm just saying there's no complaints here.
Good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Usually you get there.
Is there anyone else like to be heard on this application? No? Do I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second. Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carried. Thank you.
Take care.
The next case on the agenda is case number 18097, Gary Bates, 1 Harcourt Avenue, Smithtown. The location of the property, the northeast corner of Harcourt Avenue and Evergreen Avenue. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 3 feet to add to a non-conforming structure for a proposed 458 square foot attached garage with a 570 square foot proposed second floor addition.
Good evening.
Good evening. I'm Gary Bates. I live at 1 Harcourt Avenue in Smithtown.
Would you like this gentleman to
Yes,
speak
I
on your
would.
behalf? Fine.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, Ralph Elsasser, E-L-S-A-S-S-E-R, for the applicant, Mr. Gary Bates. Mr. Chairman, members of the board, we're here tonight. This house back in May had a horrific fire, and we're going to be rebuilding the house on the same foundation. So we're not changing the footprint of the home. The home already did have a garage prior to, and we had a 5-foot side yard with the garage. The reason we're requiring the 3 feet versus that, because of the gable that's going to be in the front, which is going to be hung over about 2 feet. But the garage is going to be in the same location as the previous garage. The addition upstairs is common for the area as far as the 2-family homes. This wasn't a situation that was created by these people. There happened to be a fire, and the house has to be rebuilt. There was many 2-story homes on the street in the area, and like I said before, the footprint of the home is not going to change, and the 570 square feet, what we're doing, we're not changing the amount of bedrooms in the home. We're just actually going to be increasing the size of the bedrooms. Thank you.
How high is the new second-floor addition?
31 feet.
31 feet, yes.
And that's the part that wasn't there before, right? You're going up.
That would be correct, Ms. Spence. What happened is that wasn't there before. And again, you have a house next door to it too, but which is that garage. That's their garage side also.
Yeah.
So this isn't going to affect any of the neighbors whatsoever.
All right, thank you. Anyone else have any questions?
Yeah, the concern I have is you're going to 3 feet on that side, which when it's just a 1-story garage, which is what I'm seeing in the pictures of the before pictures.
Yeah.
Going second story that close to the property line is considerably impacting on any neighbor that would be there, because now you're basically imposing on their property.
What I was explaining to you is the fact that the house that is adjacent to this property, that side there that's their garage.
Correct.
You're not
I
going to be
understand
able-
that, but it's still on the property,
Understood.
essentially on the property line, 30 feet in the air.
Understood. And I could see a
is-
concern if you were being able to see down into somebody else's house and so forth, but there'd be nothing to look into except
Well,
the top of
suppose that
somebody's
person
garage.
wanted to expand their garage.
And if they wanted to expand theirs, then
you'd both be
then they could look in each other's
passing
windows if
tea
that's
back
what
and
their
forth
wish would be.
between your windows.
Okay.
Anyway,
so-
for me, it's a non-starter. Do you have a possibility of cutting back that second story over
I
there?
could bring the
Because-
contractor here and he can explain that, Bill. You can explain it probably a lot better than I can with this.
Good evening.
Evening.
Again, can
William
you-
Hodge.
Okay.
Sure. William Hodge, Summer Builders, HODGE, William. Okay, so the existing foundation would actually be at 5 feet, not at 3. I know it is still close, but at 5 foot, if you look at the drawings that they're bringing on, the 2-foot eave is what approaches to the 3-foot mark. We can redesign the face of that. The architect is also here so that that 2-foot encroachment isn't there. It's just there so that a gutter would be able to get the water off the face of the house. That could be changed. The approach angle that you're referring to, that it would be too much at that side of his house, the next door neighbor is 20 feet from that property line. So it's 25 feet plus his 2-car garage, which is essentially 50 feet away from his point of view angle up. So where they would see, it's not really encroachment on the property line. The existing house, which you can't see in this print, had a second story on it and a roof, but it was further. It wasn't at
No, I
the
can see
edge
it.
of the. Oh, okay. I didn't know.
Yeah, he's got it.
Okay.
The thing is this here, you mentioned that if in fact that the neighbor decided to do this, even if they decided to do this, it's still so far away.
Well, let me put it this way. It's a non-conforming.
Yes.
Town's policy to not expand a non-conforming unless there's a compelling reason to expand the non-conformity. Obviously, having a fire, I'm personally sympathetic to, if they had it before, they should have it back. But this is something that, as long as I've been on this board, we have not granted ever 5 feet with a two-story that close to the property line.
What happened in a case like this here, what we were looking to do here is to increase the bedroom sizes of the home, not increasing the amount of bedrooms. And that's where we had stayed here.
I know, I guess maybe you're missing what I'm
No, no,
asking.
I
What
understood.
I'm asking is it possible to move that second story over?
Well, I mean,
Have it be
obviously,
a partial over the garage instead of all the way to the property?
obviously to allow the homeowner to have more square footage, we could shrink part of it, but you wouldn't, he has two frontages, it's a corner lot, so I couldn't shift it to be over the other side. 'cause
No,
I'm
I get that.
Opposing that, so to keep the same footprint and same square footage, the answer is no. Would he be willing to, I mean, he's obviously here, would he be willing to take some of that away? Possibly, if that's what the board allows him to have.
Yeah, and
so
you
that-
obviously don't want it to be a design that looks awful.
Right,
either.
you know, moving it a couple of feet so that that 2-foot eave comes all the way around, so he doesn't have the 3-foot, it's at 5 foot. Then I could keep that, the style of that front garage, I'll wrap it right around the side of the house so it looks,
It's still 5 feet.
you know, you don't want it to look strange. You don't want to look like you half-assed it, if you will.
Yeah.
You know, the other possibility, so it doesn't look so large to the neighboring neighbor, would be to change the roof. It's currently as a gable. We could change it to a hip, which would increase the, you know, the vertical slope of it from the neighbor's point of view. It wouldn't look, you know,
No, I got it.
but that would only be if the neighbor has an issue and he does not. I mean, we confronted the neighbor. He knows the neighbor and he doesn't care.
Yeah, but we.
I
we'll-
totally
we
understand
rented the
that.
property, so 100 years from now, it'll still be there and there'll be two different
I
neighbors.
understand that.
We know it doesn't matter what the neighbor says. We understand that.
He'd be here if he cared. The 10 others that were just here.
Thank
So,
you.
yes, essentially it could be.
Just so that the board is aware, our audio-video system for
Yeah.
our screen is not working. However,
noticed.
we do have an aerial
Mhm.
of the applicant's property and the next-door neighbor's property on the computer screen if you want to look at it.
In the meantime, does planning have any questions?
No questions. I think the information's been pretty thorough. The only thing I would say, though, that, as Tony said, 5-foot setback for a 30-foot high structure is very substantial. And I don't recall, since I've been working for the board ever granting a variance of that substantiality for a 2-story addition.
I don't think we ever have.
Thank you.
What would, can I just say, what would the recommendation of the board be at this point?
It's generally not our, I don't want to speak for everyone, but it's generally not our job to recommend, you know, what, obviously, we're sympathetic to what an applicant wants, and we're also sympathetic to what the town code allows.
Understood.
That being said, if the applicant could take a look at the plan and maybe come up with a compromise before we adjourn, or before we close, so that.
Can I make a suggestion, Mr.
Sure.
Chairman? You could request an adjournment of this hearing and then revisit the design, and we'll hold it
Is-
open.
I don't mean to cut you off, I apologize. Is the board, the second-story lot line where the ridge, currently it's gable, so where the second-story plate, upper plate is, it would only be at about 20 feet, I can't do the numbers right off the top of my head, but roughly 20 feet at that property point, so the house still looks cosmetically the same from the street, but he wouldn't have that 30-foot ridge to him. The ridge would be at the center line of the house.
Pardon me, I don't mean to interrupt you, but as Mr. Tangi said, the board is not in a position to help you negotiate the size of a recommendation. That's up to you.
I'll do a previous application that we had at 5 feet was for a carport. So, just to give you that bit of information.
I just spoke with Mr. Bates just now, and I think it may be best so we can sit down and digest this, and we'll ask, we'll request an adjournment on this.
And planning obviously can help you.
Absolutely, and I think that would be the best route to go at this point here, and this way we don't keep going around and round and round in
Perfect.
circles, okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
When's the next meeting?
February
12th.
12th.
February 12th. February 12th will give you enough time?
I think that would be okay, Mr. Bates. February 12th? Thank you, sir.
February 12th.
Thank you very, very much.
You're welcome.
Okay. You can handle this.
Send these.
I'll handle this.
carport? Remember the carport? Car seat?
This is, I don't think we have that.
Case on the agenda, case number 1-17979, Gordon Ostajic, 42 Meadow Glen Road, Fort Salonga. The location of the property is the south side of Berry Hill Drive, 398 feet east of Wood Hollow Lane. The property is zoned R43. The applicant is requesting variances to permit environmentally sensitive land to be altered for lot number 1 for slopes in excess of 15%. Permit a structure within 10 feet of any slope greater than 25% for lot number 1. Reduce the minimum lot area from 43,560 square feet to 13,931 square feet for lot number 1.
Good evening.
To the board, my name is Gordon Ostojic, O-S-T-O-J-I-C. I reside at 43 Meadow Glen Road. That's a typo. It says 42 on the agenda, but it's 43 Meadow Glen Road, Fort Salonga, New York. I'm here on regarding a planned subdivision called Gemini Landing 2, and I'd like to have my architect, Michael Morbillo, speak on my behalf. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, again, for the record, Michael Morbillo, architect, Inspired Design Group. The application before you this evening is actually, it's a rehearing. We had been before this board initially back in June of 2018, June 26, 2018. And we were here for variances. At that time, we needed to move on to the planning board for a planning recommendation. I'll go over the application briefly. We're looking to subdivide approximately 2-acre parcel of property into 2 1-acre lots. And when we were before this board the last time, we were intending to access the property off of Berry Hill Drive, which is a cul-de-sac. This property actually fronts the right-of-way on Berry Hill Drive. At the time we had come before the board, we had expressed concern. We had previously been in an application, and we had been somewhat, I'll say, denied several years earlier. We didn't actually come before this board. We were just in front of the planning board. And we came back with basically with the plea to say, listen, the town would like us to connect through to Meadow Glen. There's a subdivision that was approved that they were supposed to build a driveway to the edge of the applicant's property, and this driveway had never been constructed. And it was very difficult for us to, construct a driveway that would have been, twice as long as any other driveway in the area. So last time we were here, we were basically seeking to run a driveway that was a couple of 100 feet from our property to the edge of Berry Hill Drive. And we were looking to cross a right-of-way that we front, which is actually the Berry Hill right-of-way. In that time, we presented here. We then went to the planning board for a recommendation. When we were in front of them, the new adjacent property owner, who actually works in a paving company, was discussing with the planning department about constructing this driveway that leads to their property. I believe it was supposed to have been constructed earlier. That was part of our frustration at the last time we were here. But in that time, when we were in front of the planning board, they actually got more somewhat concrete plans to build this driveway. And in fact, within the last month and a half, that segment of the driveway was constructed, which basically negated our need to access this Berry Hill right-of-way. So we revised our design to connect into the driveway that was recently constructed. Since it was a substantial design, we needed to come back to you guys again to get referred back to the planning board to look at the revised design. So we couldn't go back into the planning board because it changed. Also, and Blaze can probably reflect on this, the last time we were in front of the planning board for this recommendation, they chose not to make any recommendation. They did not say whether they wanted to recommend it. They remained silent. And became apparent that that driveway access was, well, at least to me, it seemed apparent that that driveway access off of the Berry Hill right-of-way was a sticking point. So fortunately for my client, the adjacent property owner who had been talking about doing this driveway, which is for like the first 200 feet, came in and actually built it. So we then revised our design. We understand that we need to go back to the planning board again to get a recommendation to come back to you to hopefully make a decision on this. So we're kind of doing this. We're doing it twice. The merits of the case and the application hasn't really changed. Initially we had the house placed on the east side of the property, closer to the Berry Hill right-of-way. We've now moved it to the west side of the property, close to Meadow Glen Road, where there is a private driveway which goes across private land, which abuts my client's property. So the substantiality of all the variances are still basically the same. There's nothing that's really changed at this point. We have steep slopes property. None of those conditions have changed. And our proximity to the house and the retaining walls being built close to the steep slopes have not changed. So we're in a little bit of a process now, and if the board has any questions with this revised design, I'd be more than happy to answer them at this time.
All right, thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No, thanks.
No, thank you.
Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Come on up, please. Good
Hi,
evening.
folks. My name is Anthony Verga, V as in Victor, E-R-G-A. I live at 2 Berry Hill Drive in Fort Salonga, and I think I might have the closest piece of property to Mr. Ostich's project, all right? And I am in disagreement with a house that will be put on 1/3 of an acre. 16 years ago, we moved to 2 Berry Hill Drive. Mainly, or one of the main reasons, was because it was in an area of acre zoning. We pay a lot of taxes where we are to live on an area that is acre zoning, and I think that respectfully, that the request violates considerations 1 and 3. If you go from an acre down to 1/3, or perhaps a little less than 1/3 of an acre, if that's not substantial, I don't know what is. And I think it violates the consideration number 1, that it will change the basic, serene, peaceful, sylvan atmosphere of the acre zoning neighborhood. So I would like to register my disagreement with this project moving forward. Thank you all.
I believe the lot is actually 2.5 acres.
As far as I know.
It's only the town reduces it because they take out steep slopes. They don't consider that as buildable, even though the lot is actually almost 2.6 acres. The lot is still going to be 2.5 acres.
What's lot 1, 13,000 square feet?
The
What is
town
that?
basically won't count areas that are steep slopes. They only count areas that are less than 15%.
So the house is going to be put on a piece of property that's 2.5 acres?
Correct.
I have no disagreement with that at all. I'm delighted.
Sorry for the confusion.
That's okay. I'm sure I was the one confused. Just as a side note, I am absolutely delighted that the request to have the driveway onto Berry Hill cul-de-sac was dismissed summarily. So, nice work, gentlemen.
Good, thank you. Anyone else? Nope. Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second?
Did they want to say anything?
Oh, I think you answered it.
Oh, all right.
Moved in second?
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
That's confusing. That's Blaze does that.
Okay, so this, yeah, we have all, so this is a misprint.
Three.
Okay. This is a misprint.
Is that you?
It's on the agenda, number 18082, Lorna Lane, 58 Parnell Drive, Smithtown. The location of the property is the southeast corner of Parnell Drive and Hollywood Drive. The property is zoned R10. The applicant is requesting variances to reduce the minimum side yard from 12 feet to 11 feet for an existing 100-square-foot first-floor addition. Reduce the front yard on Hollywood Drive from the property line from 10 feet to 5 feet for an existing 6-foot fence. Reduce the front yard on Hollywood Drive from 40 feet to 31 feet to permit an accessory structure in the required front yard for an 82-square-foot shed. Reduce the minimum distance to any rear lot line from 1 foot to 0 for existing paving.
Good evening.
Good evening. I am Amy DeVito for the applicant, Lorna Lane. There's a power of attorney that was just handed to Mr. Barnes. I have my company's Woodhull Expediting with offices at 332 Woodhull Avenue, Port Jefferson Station, New York, 11776.
All right?
Okay. Sorry. This is not
You
made
can take it out if
This
you
is not
want,
made for
but-
short people. Okay. Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. My clients have owned the home for at least the last 30 years and throughout the years have made some improvements to their property. We're currently undertaking to legalize the rear wood deck, rear addition, plastic shed, fence, and paving. We are here this evening to request relief of the variances required for these items, which range in age from 15 to 21 years. I have with me photographs and aerial pictures showing similar characteristics in the neighborhood, including paving close to or at property lines, sheds and fences in front yards, as well as homes and additions with close proximity to the lot lines. It is our opinion that these variances sought are not substantial as they are not out of character for the neighborhood as displayed in my photos and will not create an adverse impact on the environment. We are hopeful that our request for relief is received favorably by the board so that we may proceed to and continue in the legalization process of all existing structures and obtain permits and final COs as soon as possible. Thank you, and I'm happy to answer any questions that the board may have, and I'm just going to bring the photos up if I may.
Okay.
This is like the wall area, and then this here shows the actual address of what I'm pointing out.
Does anyone on the board have any questions on this application?
Not at this time.
No? Tony?
No, thanks.
No? Planning?
No, thank you.
No? Is there anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
Second?
Moved and second, all in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night now.
All right.
It's okay.
The next case on the agenda, case number 18088, Alejandro Ciamarella, 3 Kim Place, Kings Park. The location of the property, the north side of Kim Place, 101 feet east of Lawrence Road. The property is zoned R21. The applicant is requesting a variance to reduce the minimum rear yard from 75 feet to 72 feet for a proposed 153 square foot sunroom.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening. My name is Alejandro Chamarella, and I am the property owner at 3 Kim Place in Kings Park, and I'm having Mr. John Bracco, the architect, to speak for me.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening. John Bracco, architect, 17 Main Street, Sayville, New York. My client, Alex Scamarella, is seeking to add a small 150 square foot rear sunroom addition to the back of his home. Mr. Scamarella is the original owner of the home and has lived there for over 35 years. The proposed addition is not visible from the street and meets the side yard setback of the R21 zone. The floor plan of the home, unfortunately, is not conducive to putting the proposed addition in a conforming location. We are seeking a rear 3-foot setback variance of 72 feet, which equates to a 4% relaxation of the 75-foot requirement in the R21 zone. We feel this variance is minor in nature and would have no adverse impact on the adjacent neighbors or surrounding neighborhood. And we would be more than happy to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you. Anyone on the board have any questions?
No questions.
Planning? No. Anyone in the audience like to be heard on this application? Can I have a motion to close the application, please?
So moved.
Second. Moved in second. All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good night. And that concludes our hearing for tonight.